guest today is David Kindop. David is the author of Manana Doesn't Mean Tomorrow. What an unusual book. Please welcome David Kindop. Hi, Dave.
Hello, thank you.
Tell us what caused you to be motivated to write this book.
Well, I bought an old boat and I worked on it myself, and I took it to Mazatlan, Mexico to get into the sailing charter business. That was my intention. And throughout that 3 years off and on of being in Mazatlan and trying to get legal and do charters, I had some adventures, to put it mildly, in some cases. And in talking about those adventures, after it was over with friends and you know, sitting around playing poker or having dinner, people kept saying to me, boy, you know, you could write a book. And I thought, well, maybe.
You did a good job of writing a book. You could actually feel the heat and the emotion as you defined it.
Well,
it was really compelling.
Thank you. I took 7 years off and on, part-time, to write this book. And I worked on it at nights and weekends, you know, that's the drill. And as I began, I think it's good that it took me that long, because as I began to write and take that time to write and develop the surroundings, you know, the visuals and the history and the plane tickets and the visas and the passports, I really began to relive that experience as I wrote it.
I think the exciting thing about a book is that we really, really get to know the author when we're reading it. I never got to know you better than when I read your book.
That's the hard part for me. That was the hard part for me about writing this, because I felt like if I were going to deal with the characters in the book, who are real, it's a very true story, I felt if I dealt them, you know, my even hand, if you will, if I described them as I saw them, that I needed to do the same thing for me. I tried to write myself into the story as realistically as possible, and so I had to expose myself. And it took me 2 years to let anybody read what I was working on, because I had to expose myself, so not completely, but you know, fairly thoroughly.
That's what makes a great writer. One cannot write about what they don't know about. You can't write feelings and emotions that you've never felt. You can't express something that you don't really walk through or darn close to it. So that's what made the writing excellent.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And what made it difficult, like I said, was because it's true. And I say right in there, it's true. It's me. It's David Kindop, and I did this and I did that. And you know, if it were fiction, then I could just pretend that it was somebody else, and it wouldn't be so directly obvious. But in this case, it's pretty darn obvious. And but I've learned to accept that, and actually I've learned to be really comfortable with it now over a little bit of time, because of the reader reviews and what people are telling you when they read it. And everybody that reads it really likes it.
The thing is, Dave, it's compelling because it reveals the humanness of everybody involved, the real humanness, the ridiculousness, the greed, the unfairness, the manipulations, the dreams that a person wants to live and hopes to believe instead of the manipulations. It was great.
Yeah, well, thanks again. And I have heard that. I've heard that people really appreciate the fact that it's so honest about those kinds of things. And I believe, I always have and always will, that basically we're all really good human beings at heart. And if we can sift through the craziness and the peripherals, then we can get to somebody who's a really good human being at heart. And even some of these characters that come off as a little bit sketchy and edgy and weird, I think all of them, I try to show that deep down there's a really good person there.
The amazing thing is about the different cultures. We take for granted that we all think a certain way because we identify life by us. But when you get into a different culture, the value system and the way of doing things is not necessarily our way of doing things. We see some of it, but we don't see it as a total concept of thinking of perhaps a nation larger than not. Not totally, but larger than not. To think in concepts of promises, delays, well, to think in concepts of when I get around to it, because what I need to do, whatever it is, even if it's lay in the sun, is more important. But I will. I will. The concept is when is never stated.
That's a good point, and I personally believe that everybody should travel to as many countries as they can outside of the United States to get a good idea about what the people of the world are like. I think everywhere you go, the people of the world are really great people, you know, and you go to China and you don't know anything about the culture, but they're fabulous people, and they love to see you and talk to you. But in Mexico, of course, what I tried to relate is that the whole idea about mañana doesn't mean tomorrow is that mañana in Mexico really is the time that comes to pass at some future date that you discuss when it gets there. you don't know when it's going to get there. You don't know. Somebody could tell you mañana, Cheryl, mañana, you know, David, we'll meet you at the, you know, the Pasteleria Panama tomorrow, and they won't show up, and they may be thinking in their mind, tomorrow I'll be there. They might be thinking in a month. They might be thinking a year. They might be thinking never, you know, and you don't know until the time that they're talking about passes. So it makes it really interesting to plan and to schedule anything. But the good part of all that, the flip side is that there's some kind of time warp in Mexico, and their lives are not run by clocks, and they, poor or wealthy, have this amazing attitude that it doesn't matter really because it'll get done. And sure enough, I mean, obviously it's not a capitalistic crazy place like this is, but so it's a good thing, you know.
It's crazy in its own way, though, because it'll get done maybe if it comes to pass, and it's okay. No sweat.
Yeah.
I found an exciting part of the book in your personality where I saw the psychological and emotional thrill of literally being a gambler. You loved the not knowing. You actually thrived on not knowing what was going to happen and rolling with the punches, and wow, it was great, and with all the defeat, wanting to go back.
I don't think I necessarily thrive on the uncertainty and the danger and not knowing, but I think that I adjusted to that, and I did roll with it, and I made the best of it because I had no choice. I mean, there were days that I had 86 cents US to my name, you know, when I went to the Playa Mazatlan pool and had lunch with a little package of cookies and ice water from the bar, and literally not knowing what would happen the next day.
Dave, a lot of people can't do that. They would crumble and fold. And I think that the need to crumble and fold comes with a deep-seated insecurity of, wow, I can't deal with this. The amazing thing is you dealt with it. You moved over a little bit. You find a way to deal with it. You move over here a little bit. Oh, well, I can do this. And the things that you were willing to do to follow your dream were unusual and gutsy.
I think that's the key. The key is that I really wanted it so badly. I wanted to live there. I wanted to have a sailing charter business. And so I was willing to do whatever it took to try and make that happen. And I think that's the way it is with anybody who accomplishes anything that's a little bit out of the ordinary.
True. However, a lot of people just can't deal with the uncertainty. They have to have their security blanket all along the way. And you were willing to trade your security blanket for a serape, a handkerchief, whatever. And the amazing thing about it is you lost people that were important to you, that you cared about, that you had relationships with along the way, but you didn't let go of your dream. In that concept, you were a gambler because you said, psychologically, I'm going to lay all my cards on the table till I'm out of cards, but I will play.
That's true. That's true. and and that works for some of us, but for some of us, of course, it doesn't work. And it is difficult to lose people you care for when you have to follow your dream, or you have to go through some kind of expansion, some personal expansion, whether it's spiritual or physical or mental. I think that happens, but it's the price some of us have to pay to try and follow our dream and follow our hearts.
The amazing thing is that it's human nature, that everybody wants their own dream, whether they have the courage to follow it or not. So in Mexico, with all the promises, with each promise was also the realization that your dream wasn't necessarily their dream. And pacifying you was important because you were a friend. And pacification was more important than realization. Right?
Yes, that's true. I mean, the Mexicans they're fabulous people, but they definitely have a tendency to say what's convenient and do what's convenient at the moment. There's a fella that lived there, a gringo from Idaho, married to a local lady. He had the Mazatlan oil and vanilla business in Mazatlan. And I was talking to him at the bar one day, the cantina, and I was depressed, and I'd gone through some setback, and about my partners and what they'd said to me, and he just looked at me and he said, every Mexican should be born with an Oscar because they are the best actors in the world. and I think part of it's intentional, and I think part of it's unintentional. It's just the nature of the character. It's very fascinating.
I enjoyed your book on another level that a lot of people probably couldn't really relate to. I have family in Mexico, born and raised. So they're citizens of both countries. And even though they're light complected, most of them, they think just like the guys in your book.
Yeah. Yeah.
No kidding, they
Yeah.
really do. And I've always found them so amazing because after I get through dealing with them, because they're family,
Right.
I go look in the mirror and I say, are you blonde or are you retarded?
Yeah. It's interesting because when I produced the first kind of a rough copy of this book, this manuscript, I lived across the street from a couple of fellas, and one of them was a Mexican. I think he was a Mexican national, I'm not sure, and they had a place in Puerto Vallarta that they would go to 3 or 4 times a year. And I let them read the book. I thought it would be interesting to get their input. And they came over one day just laughing, and they said, "Man, you nailed it. You just nailed it the way the people think down there." And it's great. It's great to get that kind of feedback and from people that really know, And that when I hear that, I realize that's good. I was able to capture at least some element of what it feels to be there. I mean, this is certainly not a book on tourism in Mazatlan,
No.
This is the kind of the other side of the city, or not the underbelly. Well, there's a little underbelly in there, but it's really fun to be able to present that in a way that a lot of people wouldn't ever get, even having been there and maybe vacationed or something like that.
I was so impressed with the reality of the reactions psychologically and business-wise of the people that I recommended the book to my brother to understand our family.
Yeah, there aren't too many pieces that I've found. There aren't too many works where you can actually read about Mexico and also read about the Mexican mentality. There are a few. There's some really great books out there. On Mexican Time is a great one, and I think Mexico Enough is a great one. But they're 15 or 20 years old, but they speak to the craziness of the country and the people. But they don't go into the personal relationships, and they don't expose themselves quite like I did.
They're the world's greatest, perhaps, placaters. They just love you. They'll tell you what you want to hear, what you expect to hear, and assure you that it's all good and fine. And we bite into it.
Right.
We bite into it.
Well, we're used to having people, I think, be a little more straightforward and a little bit more about what you say is kind of really what's going to happen. At least at least to a greater degree than, say, in Mexico. I mean, obviously some people have hidden agendas and you can't really depend on them anywhere. But yeah, they do. But you're right, we do buy into that. And living there and looking at Mazatlan in Mexico from a different perspective, it's really fascinating to watch the tourists come. And the women come in there and they're on vacation and they want to have a good time, and the playeros, the beach guys that rent the jet skis, you know, they tell them, I love you, and they go, ooh, you know, and they run off to the motel rhythm or whatever. I mean, it's just fascinating to watch that happen. These sane people that show up on vacation in foreign countries, and it's like they leave their compass at home. You know, it's pretty fascinating.
It's amazing how we as Americans tend to believe in the words and not the actions. And when you're not around someone very long, they put on a different act. So you really don't know what their everyday actions are. You're not around them long enough to see enough action to have a guide, because actions always speak louder than words. But it does seem ridiculously clear that somebody can't be madly in love with you the minute they see you. That's not love.
Well, I don't know, I've thought that a few times. But,
that's another word.
oh yeah, right.
That's called chemistry.
Okay, yeah. Well,
Chemistry.
yeah. Well, I thought there was kind of love mixed in with that blend a couple of times, you know. But yeah, I don't know. It is interesting, and you're right. Actions speak louder than words. And one of the things that I think is important in this book, in this story, and I think people at some point might say to themselves, why in the hell would he subject himself to all this duplicity and these delays and this humiliation and this poverty to try and why would I do that? Well, the answer is that I wanted it so bad that I was even blind or blinded by the actions or the inactions of some of the people that were supposedly my partners. I just kept thinking, well, maybe, you know, just a little glimmer of something, you know, and they'd come up with this little glimmer of this bullshit, and I would buy into it because I wanted to be there so badly.
Well, Dave, don't feel bad. Every woman that's been in a bad relationship can relate to what you just said.
Yeah, well, I don't feel bad. I mean, I wouldn't do it again exactly like I did it. I would do it again. But it was one of the best things I ever did in my life. And it was, you know, I got $1 million worth of experience out of it.
Yeah, you really did. David, what do you think was the most devastating thing that happened to you in the realities of experience that you wrote in this book?
That's a tough question. I think in terms of an immediate physical, visceral reaction to an event, it probably was the night that I got busted for doing sailing charters when we really didn't have any permission that I was told we did. And that was the night that I came back late. I had these 3 ladies from Utah, one of whom that I was madly in love with. It turned out to be love, and actually there was a long relationship after that. But the idea that these people, we got in the harbor late, it was after dark, it was a sunset sail. These figures rowed up to the boat as I was anchoring or putting it on the mooring buoy, and I had these 3 women on board, and these 2 officials came up and told me I had to go to the dock, and all of the various federales and port captain people showed up, and there were 5 or 6 or 8 people there, and I was detained and I was going to be arrested, and they questioned me heavily about my activities, and my partner was nowhere to be found, and they went looking on, you know, they were trying to call him, and the ladies were there, and I was worried about them. I didn't know what the agenda was. I was afraid for them first, the ladies, and I was able to get them off and in a cab, and I felt comfortable that they were really going to go back to their hotel. And then I was afraid for me because they, you know, they pushed me aside and had me wait, and they were going to put me in jail, and I was put in this corner office with a guard, and then I was put in house arrest out on my boat with the guard, and this all took several hours while they were negotiating, you know, the disposition of me, and it was uncomfortable. I literally thought I was going to go to a Mexican jail that night.
Going to a Mexican jail is a panic in itself. That's not where you want to go.
No, I might be a little bit of an adventurer, but I'm definitely not the kind of guy that would prosper in a Mexican jail. Oh yeah, we went to the jail the next year when I went in to get some. I had to get a piece of paper from the police department that said I wasn't wanted for anything in Mexico to get my visa, my working visa. So we went to the jail with my friend Federico, and we went in there to get this piece of paper, and I saw the jail then, a little bit of it, and a year later, it was just this feeling came right up through my spine, like it brought that night back, like, oh my God, this is where I could have been. And that night that they were pressuring me, I was weary, I was tired, and I got in the corner and I looked up at the guard and I said, okay, I'm ready to go to jail. I was ready to go to jail that night, and I'm so glad they didn't take me.
I'm really glad you didn't go. I am really glad.
Yeah.
We may not see you again if you went to a Mexican jail.
Yeah, yeah.
They can forget about you.
Well,
They can put you in the jail and forget about you. You know, I understand they don't feed you and take care of you, not really. If you don't have somebody on the outside bringing you what you really need, you're in deep, deep, serious trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not like our jails.
Right. Well, I was probably a little too cavalier about it. That was then, and this is now, and you know, I've learned since then. I mean, this took place a little while ago.
Terrorized into the shocking reality of what it could have been. That would really be scary.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that would frighten anybody.
But you know, I think you talk about a certain kind of personality that takes risks and will do something for their dream, and I think you know you have to consider that sailors are a whole another breed of cat. I mean, every sailor I know that's a true sailor that'll get in their boat and go. I mean, you've got to have a special view of the world to do that.
I believe that's true. You have to really be courageous, daring, love the thrill of the challenges that come up. See challenges as something to overcome rather than to run from.
Oh, right. And in sailing, there's a great thrill in the self-sufficiency of being an offshore blue water sailor or going offshore. I mean, it's just you and your crew, if that's, you know, if you have a crew, and theoretically you have at least one other people or one other person. It's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. And I told my my sisters were concerned when I got this 35-year-old wooden boat and spent 6 months working on it myself to take it to Mazatlan from the Sacramento Delta, and they were concerned about that trip. And I told them before I left, I said, look, if something happens to me, if I die down there, if I get lost at sea, or if in Mexico something happens and I get killed or whatever, don't worry about it. Don't spend a dime with any of this, you know, bringing me back and all that. Don't get emotionally involved. If I'm gone, I'm gone, and I'm moving on to the next realm. So, you know, don't worry about it. And they were a little nervous about that, but it's the truth, you know. And it's like if you go sailing, you have to get comfortable with the fact that you could die out there.
We could die at home. There's more accidents at home than anywhere else.
Right.
The concept of facing whatever might happen, no matter where you're at, is a different concept. Most people hang on to life in fear of losing it,
Right.
not realizing that we all live and we all die and nobody gets out alive.
Right.
So how are you going to live?
Right.
That's the question.
Right, yeah. Well, Earl Nightingale said one time, I really love this statement, he said that most people tiptoe through life to get safely to death. And I mean, that's just, to me, that's just not the way to do it. When I get to be at the point where I'm sitting on the veranda in the rocking chair with this blanket, Mexican blanket over my knees,
Mexican.
I want to be able to go back into my mind and just smile a lot. You know, I don't want to be sitting there wishing I had, oh gee, back in 1992 I could have and would have. That won't get it for me.
It's been said that the greatest regret that most people have is that they didn't really take any of their dreams seriously enough to let go of their comfort and follow them.
I think that's true, absolutely. Yeah. Mark Twain, great quote of Mark Twain that I use in my book about, you know, he says, a very nice quote that works really well for my arrival in Mazatlan is, you'll regret the things you didn't do, not the things you did do, and throw off the bow lines and go find some blue water and experience life.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we don't follow what we love, then the value of life really loses its spark.
Well, I think so. And I think for a lot of us deep down we realize that. And it's interesting because I'll get people that respond to this book and they'll pick out some little thing that I really don't think about much or haven't thought about. And they'll say that what you said in that particular part of the book or part of your story really gave me pause and made me think about my life. That's very, very rewarding. I like it when I hear that. And I have heard that a little bit about what people think when they read the book, that they get an emotional reaction and they really start thinking about what they're doing with their life. And I think that's wonderful.
If we do not include us, our hopes, our dreams, and our desires in our life, whose life is it? If we don't make room for us, what we really feel and want, where's the value? Where's the value of life without our personal desired value?
And that's absolutely true. And you know, I tell people often when I meet people and there may be some kind of a relationship, business, personal, I let them know that, you know, I value your individuality and I value you as an independent person who has your truth. And I will respect your truth and your views, and you just do the same for me and we'll get along fine.
Very few people can do that. They want to remake everybody over into their own image to be acceptable, and then they wonder why they feel unacceptable.
Right.
If we accept ourselves, why do we need to do that?
Right.
We don't need to do that.
Well, somebody said one time that if you and I were both exactly the same, that one of us would be unnecessary.
Yes.
And it wouldn't be me.
Or me.
Yeah.
Depending on who's saying it.
Exactly.
Correct?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
A message from SafeKidsNow.com. Your future is determined by what you choose to honor.